It was the kind of night that felt wrong. The wind howled through the trees, bending branches in unnatural ways, and the full moon cast an eerie glow over the land. Sarah had been hiking for hours, far off the beaten path. She had intended to explore the dense forest to find peace, a break from the chaos of her everyday life, but now she regretted venturing so deep into the woods. The trees seemed to close in on her, as if the forest itself was alive, watching. She had lost her way. The trail markers were gone, and every direction seemed the same. Nothing but thick, oppressive woods stretching endlessly in all directions. Just when panic began to creep into her chest, she saw it, a small cabin nestled between the twisted trees. It looked old, abandoned, and it was the only sign of civilization she had seen for miles. She approached cautiously, her heart racing. The air around her grew colder, the once welcome moonlight now casting long, skeletal shadows. Without thinking, she pushed open the creaking door. It swung wide, revealing a dimly lit room inside. The air was thick with dust and an odd, musty scent that made her gag. The windows were covered in grime, barely letting in any light. The floorboards groaned beneath her feet as she stepped inside. She hesitated for a moment, but the thought of staying outside in the freezing night was far worse than venturing into the cabin. A soft thud echoed from upstairs. Sarah froze, her breath caught in her throat. "Who's there?" she called out, but there was no answer. Her voice felt small in the vast, empty space. She took a step forward, her boots making another loud creak on the wooden floor. The air grew colder still, and her breath came out in visible puffs. The thud came again, closer this time. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves, and slowly made her way up the narrow staircase. The wood beneath her feet was warped, and with every step she half expected the floor to give way. The further up she went, the heavier the air seemed to become, as though something was pressing in from all sides. At the top of the stairs she paused, scanning the dark hallway. There were two doors, one slightly ajar, the other closed. A faint light flickered from beneath the door on the left. Without thinking, Sarah stepped toward it. As her hand touched the doorknob, she heard a whisper. Her heart skipped a beat. She pulled her hand back, but the door creaked open of its own accord. A gust of cold air hit her face, and she stepped into the room. It was small, almost suffocatingly so. The walls were lined with old faded wallpaper, and the only furniture was a rickety old bed in the center of the room, its sheets long since turned yellow with age. The light that flickered was coming from a single candle sitting on a nightstand beside the bed. Suddenly, the candle flickered violently, casting long, monstrous shadows across the room. The air seemed to thrum with an unnatural energy, and then
"Help, we please."
the voice was faint at first, a weak, desperate whisper, but it grew louder, more urgent. Sarah whipped around, her eyes frantically searching the room, but there was no one, just the bed, the candle, and the suffocating silence. "Help me!" the voice repeated, now a shrill, panicked scream. It came from beneath the bed. Her stomach twisted, but some part of her, the part that could not turn away, crouched down to look. She peered into the darkness under the bed. At first, she saw nothing but dust and shadows, but then a figure emerged. A pale, gaunt face with hollow eyes, lips cracked and bloodless, stared up at her. Its mouth opened, and the scream that followed was deafening, so raw and full of anguish that it felt like her very soul was being torn apart. Sarah screamed, stumbling backward, but the figure reached out, its bony fingers brushing against her ankle. A loud crash echoed from below. The door slammed shut. The light from the candle flickered one last time, then went out, plunging the room into darkness. She could hear the figure's breath, ragged and wet, close to her ear, and a voice not her own whispered from the corner of the room.
Get out before it's too
The air
late."
grew impossibly cold, and the whispering grew louder, echoing in her mind. Panic surged through her, and she bolted from the room, her feet slipping on the wooden stairs. She tore open the cabin door, her lungs burning as she gasped for air. She could feel something following her, its presence pressing against her back, but when she turned, nothing was there. The woods were silent once more, save for the wind. She didn't stop running until she saw the first sign of the main road, but even then she could still hear the voices, the whispers. They followed her. This was the end of the story. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss any videos I will post in the future.